Hi, I'm Hani Gluck, and you are listening to Growing Global. I am passionate about helping entrepreneurs grow and scale their business. I've been an entrepreneur for over 2 decades. I built my own businesses, sold a business, and continue to leverage the global economy. Growing Global is about educating, inspiring, and motivating entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs on how to take yourself and your business to the next level. Okay, so I am super excited to have my good friend Chris Ronzio on the show today. Chris is the founder and CEO of Trainual, a leading SaaS company that helps fast-growing businesses automate their onboarding and training by documenting every process, policy, and procedure in one simple, searchable, teachable system. After helping hundreds of entrepreneurs, myself included, create scalable systems and processes with his consulting firm that he started in 2013 called Organized Chaos, Chris developed a passion for helping business leaders find the time to do more of what they love by providing a way to document and delegate what they do. Thanks, Chris, for being on. So
Thank
excited
you
to
for
have you
having
here.
me. Yeah, this is great.
Okay, let me start off by saying I am wearing the shirt, which you can see.
I love it.
Yeah. So
Do it,
you
document it, delegate it. And I've got the stickers all over my laptop, which I don't know if I can. Whoop, there it is.
love it. Love it. I love that you it just felt so personal when I got this like order form to fill this out. And it was really just because I sent you a client, I think, but I just thought it was kind of cool to just show your appreciation so quickly. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for meeting with me on your birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to really like you to meet to give up my this fun day, but no, this is going to be fun for us. I'm excited. You were really good at getting into the details of my company when you consulted for me many years ago, and I owned a billing company. And you did a few things that were really impactful. But let's talk to me about. Let's first talk about the documentation piece of it. If somebody has a small company and they have some stuff documented, but not all stuff documented, what's a good way to introduce this to your team? Just the idea. Tell us where to start.
Well, I guess I would start by introducing the thing you've got on your shirt, the do it, document it, delegate it. So I came up with that kind of looking back at all the companies I had worked with and thinking about how businesses grow. And I think business owners put a lot of pressure on themselves to skip steps and get to delegating and get to documenting when really what you start is with doing. So you're in the business, you're figuring it out, you're experimenting, you're trying to figure what are the best practices for how we do things, and things could change every day. So you don't want to waste time writing it down and documenting it because you're still in the thick of it. You're figuring it out. And so I think it's important to recognize that and say it's okay. We don't need a manual. We don't need a playbook when we're just getting started because we're in this experimentation mode. And if that's where you are in some area of your business, that's totally fine. So the time to document when you write things down is when you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And quite honestly, you might feel like, I don't want to do this anymore. So you're just doing this thing and you're filling out the same form for the 100th time, or you're sending the same templated email for the 100th time, or you're walking in and having the same meeting with a customer for the 100th time. And then you think, I wish someone else would do this, that like, how do I get there? And that's when you document. So I think, you start with just being okay that you're figuring things out in business, but then little by little, you identify, here's an area where we've got some system. Like we've got a process, a repeatable process, and I want to write that down because I want to formalize it and make sure everyone else is doing it the same way. So that's the next step as you document it. And when I say document, it's really just collecting. So again, this doesn't have to feel like a stressful thing. It's just there's something you're doing it repeatably, and you need to just pause and get it out of your head. And whether you do that on a recording like this with a video, or you're standing side by side with someone and they open up their smartphone and record what you're doing, or you write down in a paper or Evernote or Google Doc, or you start writing down, here are the steps. That's documenting. So it doesn't have to be stressful.
Okay.
And then delegating is the last step. So once you've got something written down, this is closing the loop. This is handing it to someone else and saying, here, follow these instructions. It's like, the IKEA instructions or something. They don't even have words. They've simplified it to the fact that it's just pictures, and anyone in the world can put one of those things together. And that's where you're trying to get to in terms of just the simplicity of, here's how to do something and you're doing it correctly.
Okay, so let's talk about a big problem that happens in our industry where we have people that have been in the industry for a long time. People have employees for the last 10 years. Those employees are holding on to information like they have this major secrets of like the White House, like just
Yeah.
really like holding on so strongly to these processes. And I think many times the bosses don't even know what they don't know. What
Mm-hmm.
advice could you give us for people that the CEO is not even involved in this process? What you just described is the CEO, right? But let's talk about when it's that situation.
Yeah. So I think it really applies to anyone. So the thing that your teammates and your employees need to understand is that if they ever want to grow in the business, they've got to be able to let go of the things they're doing today. And so when you frame this to your people in terms of a promotion or a raise or a career path, and you say, hey, if you want to ever do anything new, you've got to free up some capacity and some bandwidth and let go of the old things that you're doing. That's just training, right? Like you do things today that take up a certain percentage of your calendar and your time. And if you want to take on new responsibilities, you've got to shift those old things off your plate. And so I think that's the first thing, is you've got to give your people the context of, look, I'm not trying to make you irrelevant in the business. I'm not trying to replace you with robots. Take away that fear. Say, I want to invest in you, but I need you to let go of the most mundane things that you're doing so that you can take on new challenges. Now, there's a certain type of person that just wants to do the same thing forever and has no aspiration of growth. And if you recognize that when you're talking to them, then they're just kind of like, a cog in the wheel. I don't want it to sound negative because it's an individual decision, but they're filling a role for you, for the company, that needs to be done. And if sometime it doesn't work out and there's nowhere up for them to go, then they could be replaced by someone else to fill that role. But the real leaders and the people growing in your business will rise to the occasion. They want to take on new responsibility and they want to get rid of the things they don't want to do. So the way I always position this to people when I was consulting is, I would say, what are the couple things that you feel like you never have enough time to get around to, but you really wish you could just clear your schedule and do these things? And people would, no problem coming up with these things like, oh, we've talked forever about this, and this, but I never seem to be able to get through all the work I've got on my plate to get to those things. And so then you're like, oh, you want to get some stuff off your plate? Perfect. Let's work on that. And then you go into the analysis of like, well, what's everything you're doing today? And what are the things that take up the most time? And how do we carve out some of these things to free up time for the other thing? And I think going through the conversation like that gets people enrolled in the process. You're not jamming training down their throat or scaring people and saying, we need to document every single thing that happens in the business. You're really investing in them. And you're trying to give them a means to get to their own destination, which is what they really want to do day to day.
Love it. Love it. So let's talk about the different departments, because it's not always just operations documenting what they're doing. Do you have a framework of, okay, these are the departments that, CEOs have this stuff in their head, but they're not really sure how to get it out? If I'm a CEO and I really don't have a lot documented, where would I start, or what departments would I look at?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first company before the consulting was a video production company. And it took me about 6 months to transition from president of that company to owner of that company. And I promoted my director of operations and went through this process where we had to figure out everything that I was still doing in order to one by one train him to take over those things. So I think this doesn't just apply to the CEO, it applies to every single person in your organization. So here's the process. You want everyone to brainstorm their roles and responsibilities, and you can do it in a couple hours. The way that you do it is first you tell everyone to brainstorm a time-based approach. So what are the things that you do every day? Think about, when you get to work in the morning, what's your routine? Before you go to lunch, what are you doing? When people are knocking on your door throughout the day, what are they asking for? What do you have to do before you leave? That's the stuff you do every day. And then there's the things you do every week. Are there reports you're running by Fridays, or you have to close something out before the weekend? There's every couple weeks. Maybe you're running payroll or paying some vendors. There's the stuff you do monthly. Maybe there's financial reports you're looking at, or you've got to reorder inventory. There's the stuff you do quarterly. So you go through this time-based approach. And if you give everyone that list of daily, weekly, biweekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, then very quickly they'll come up with dozens of things that they're responsible for. Now, the next thing you want to do is, those are the top of mind things. Now you want to start digging deeper. And so the two things I always recommend are every single person, if they use a computer and use email, should go into their sent mail folder. There's a little trick because a lot of people get bombarded with tons of spam and email, and it's just chaos. But if you look at your sent mail, these are the things you're actually engaging with. You're replying to someone, they're asking you for something, you're engaging with them. And so if you go through the last couple of weeks, you can pick out all the different responsibilities of, okay, this person's asking for me to pay this bill, or this is a website that's prompting me, and that's right, I log in there to do this every day. Or it's a great way to jog your mind. And then you can do the same thing with your calendar, which is just to look backward in your calendar, and then also just keep tabs for the next few days and actually put on your calendar the things that you do. And what's crazy is this doesn't take a lot of time, but with just the quick brainstorming and your calendar and your email, your whole team will come up with just hundreds and hundreds of things that they do in the business. And that's where to start, is to have that outline that you can all just kind of compare notes and say, oh, you do that? I thought I did that. Or we both do that? Do we do it differently? That's where to start.
Okay, that's interesting because it's not how I did it. When I started my second company, I knew that I had to have a sales process, a marketing process, an HR process, a payroll, and it just kind of went through every single department. So I thought you were going to say something like that, but this is definitely different.
Well, so I can go there too. So, what you're talking about is the organization of your content. So I think first in terms of gathering and collecting everything, it's sort of like if you were cleaning your closet or your garage or a pantry, you take everything out and you've got just a mess of stuff everywhere. And then when you put it back in is when you're organizing it. So I always go about things first in terms of let's collect, let's brainstorm, let's get everything on the table. So we've got all of these responsibilities. And then from there, we'll categorize, we'll group things together by department or so forth. So I think, you might remember when we worked together consulting, we had this huge spreadsheet of all the different responsibilities. And the first step was not to categorize them by department or anything. The first step was to make a huge list, right?
Yes.
Because we just needed to get it all out there. And then from there, we started to categorize into, all right, what are the departments and what are the roles within those departments and who does what?
By the way, that responsibility matrix was like game changer, a major game changer. And I'll put one in the show notes so you guys can download it and see like what a responsibility matrix looks like. But it is the coolest thing. It's so eye-opening just to see, whose boxes are checked. Anyway, we'll give that to people.
Get excited because we're building that into Trainual.
No.
So,
Oh
yeah,
my
so
gosh, it's amazing.
it's coming.
Okay, so let's talk about Trainual. I want for people to understand because I am like I'm all about systems and processes. That's like my jam right now. I can't work with anyone that doesn't have systems and processes because the only way to outsource is to document stuff. And if you don't have it documented, you can't delegate it or train anyone to do it. So I'm all about this. But a question I get asked a lot is, at what point do I transition from my Google Docs to Trainual? And what would you say to that? Like, when do you think is when should that transition happen?
So as of today, if someone's watching this, this is the end of 2019, early 2020. If someone's watching this right now, I would say the Trainual to date has been a training tool. It's a distribution of training. So when you're starting to write things down and it's just for quick reference or to email to a few people, and you don't necessarily need the accountability of, yes, they've seen the latest version, they've signed off on this, they've gone through a quiz, they understand it. If you don't need that level of accountability because it's just you writing down some notes for the person sitting next to you because you're going to be out of the office, then you might be able to scrape by with just online collaborative document tools. But if your business is at a place where you need the accountability and you don't want to just send someone a document and hope that they open it, you want to know, have they completed this? What's the time and the date that they went through this? Do they understand it? Is there a little quiz? I would say that's the major benefit that Trainual offers, is that accountability and that scale distribution. If I want to send this thing to 100 people and I want to make sure they get up to speed quickly. So the reason I say this is, if you're watching it now, is because going forward, we're investing a lot in making Trainual great as a first place to write things down. So I think you'll see the tool change a lot over the next couple of years, and it'll evolve. But right now, I would say it's for scale distribution of training.
Okay. Well, it's been amazing for my company, and I just love what you're doing with the company. I love what you're doing personally on the branding side, but I just love where you're taking the company, and in such a short time. It's pretty crazy. So let's talk about, I know you write a lot of content, and we're both in the B2B space, right? So it's all about, you want to see your users adopt the platform, and you want to see your users grow, right? Because if what do you have situations where people sign up for the product but don't use it or are not active in it? And so,
of course,
are you creating content to kind of inspire your users? To talk to me about that.
Yeah. So first, our content strategy is sort of twofold. I do a lot of content that's just business, small business growth kind of content. And that for us is really top of funnel, just awareness of me sharing my lessons as a founder, as a CEO, a startup tech company. I'm just sharing experiences, but that's not necessarily relevant to someone that's trying to implement and use Trainual tactically. And so the company, Trainual, our marketing department, creates a lot of content that's for customer success. And this is, the webinars we're putting out, the YouTube series, bringing customers on and doing live click-through sessions, helping them build out their materials. So there's a distinction, I think, between the small business content I put out and the, help you succeed with our product content that the company puts out. Now, I want to speak to that for a second, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when they think about creating content, they're creating stuff for how to use their product or why you should buy their service. And you've got to realize most people don't care at all about that. Like, the people that care about that are the ones that have already given you money. But when you're marketing, when you're putting yourself out there, you're trying to have the cast the widest net and have the widest appeal so that the person who will eventually give you money comes in the front door and they're interested in the party you're throwing. So you've got to be more broad in your appeal, I think, top of funnel, and that's what we've tried to do.
So is that why you created the Masters group, that Facebook group? Is that part of the strategy, is to deal with your customers?
Right. So Manual Masters is a private Facebook group. It's a community that's led by our in-house learning and development expert. And it's much more tactical in terms of here's how to use the product, or let's answer questions about it. And then, same with the webinars we put on. And like I said, our website, even Trainual's website, has a whole resource center that is built for people that are trying to figure out how to make the playbooks and trying to decide on different policies and procedures. And that site is a resource for that. But that's not the content I'm putting out, because the stuff I'm putting out is more, much more high level aspirational. With Trainual, the product, it's very much like going to a gym or something. Like the person is intrigued that they want a systematized business, or they want really fit body. And so they sign up for Trainual or they go to the gym. But then whether they use it or not comes down to, do they have the right support? Do they have the right community? Do they have the right discipline? Do they have the right context for why they need to build this in their business or get in shape? And so that's what the post-sale support we provide is all about.
Love it. I love that you address both. I think it's great. And I think more businesses should do that, and see the distinction between those two categories. So I want to shift to another gear, because there's so much to cover today, but I want to talk about, you really helped me. I know you've sold a business. I've sold a business. And I come across, a lot of my clients who have been in the business for many years are on the fence about selling, not selling. Do you have any insight as to, as a business owner, what are some telltale signs that it's time to sell?
You don't want to do it anymore. I think that's the sign. Like when you're driving to work and you're like, oh, I don't want to go to this place. Or when you're talking to a customer and you're thinking, I don't want to, like, I wish I was somewhere else. Or when you're more excited about some other idea that's outside your core business, those are all signs that you don't want to do it anymore.
Okay.
With my video company, I remember standing, I hardly ever operated a camera in the last few years, but there were times when we'd have, the crew would cancel last minute and I'd have to book a flight or drive 8 hours to get to an event and be standing there at the camera, like in a 40-degree ice rink, freezing my butt off and just thinking like, why am I doing this? Is this really my life? And like those thoughts are the absolute, with absolute certainty, telling you, get out of this business. Now, I think most people, you overvalue the business you've created because of how much effort you've put into it. Maybe you've made sacrifices over the years, you haven't paid yourself enough, and you want to get paid back for all of that. And the reality is that those are all sunk costs. You made those decisions in hopes that you'd have a better outcome today than what you currently have. And if you're faced with that situation, you have to be willing to say, I'm either going to shut this down and get nothing out of it, but I get to work on this amazing thing over here, or I'm going to just sell this off. I'm going to liquidate. I'm going to get whatever I can get for it and move on as quickly as possible. And if it's not one of those two things, then chances are you're going to have to put a lot of effort into renovating your business as a turnaround CEO to bring it to the point that you could get the value you want to sell it to someone. And in my experience, that's a very difficult thing to do. So my advice to people would be, first, be real with yourself. Do you want to do it anymore? And if you don't, realize you're not in jail. You're not captive in your business. It's your choice. So try to make a quick decision. And then when you're moving forward, you've got to realize, how much time do you really want to invest in extracting value out of your current business versus creating value in whatever you're doing next.
So true. I just remember the day I sold, I just felt like the biggest brick was off my back. It just felt amazing. But I think that for many people, your identity gets tied to your company. And I think the biggest advice I would say for business owners is to keep them separate, right? Your business, you have to have your own identity outside of your business, because some people feel like when they sell their business, like, who am I, right? What's going, so I know for me, I could have sold a lot sooner had I not been so tied to it. But I love I love this business. I'm like super passionate. I don't think I've ever been this passionate about a business
That's
as I
amazing.
am with this one. So that's pretty awesome. Um, so I wanted to talk about, just touch on your podcast because I did binge listen to it just over these last few days. And
Thank you.
yes, you have some great people on there. I'm really very impressive. But you mentioned in your podcast that you recorded them all before, and then you just released them, which is an interesting way of doing this. But you mentioned that you became so much more successful from when you started the interview process. So I'm curious to hear, like, could you share with us some tidbits or something that you felt like helped you in your own business?
Through doing the podcast or
Through
just
the
in
recording, the
general?
people that you were talking to on your podcast. Like,
Yeah, so I think what was interesting is we started the idea of a podcast came because I got introduced to an author. Someone mentioned I was doing a demo of Trainual. They said, "Oh, I just read this book by this guy who basically talks all about everything Trainual does, and you should probably meet him." And so I went looking for his website, and on his website it said, "Don't email me. I won't respond. I use Voxer. So if you want to get in touch with me, use Voxer." So I looked the guy up on Voxer and I sent him a message and I said, "Hey, I just downloaded your book. One of my customers said that it's cool. I'd love to talk to you." And he misinterpreted me saying I'd love to talk to you with, he probably gets a lot of interview requests. And he sent me some link back immediately, said, "Yeah, sounds interesting. Like, I'd be happy to do an interview. Here you go." And so it started with that, with me saying, "Okay, crap, like I got to make up a podcast so I can interview this guy." And I did the interview. And once we had one, then it sort of became like, are we going to release it right now, or should we collect a few more of these? And so little by little, I would get introduced to other business people or other authors, and I'd say, "Oh, we should interview them for our soon to be released podcast." And that went on for, like 14 months or something. And I was collecting these interviews with people, listening to them, doing the research like you said you did, where I would read their book over the weekend and then I'd interview them, or I would listen to other podcast interviews they had been on so I could come up with different questions. And just the act of doing that, I was running all of their advice and their tips through my day-to-day experience of whatever we were going through with Trainual. So it was sort of this really cool catalog of people that I was able to bring together. And so once we had 10 episodes, I think, we said, "Okay, now we can package this and release it like a Netflix season and put it out. People can binge it, and then we'll get more intentional about doing them on a regular basis going forward once we've got an audience of people that have heard the first season." So that was our strategy, and it's actually worked really well. We hit top 100 podcasts on iTunes in the US and in Canada. And so we got a little bit of notoriety there, and now it's making interviews for season 2 a lot easier.
that's awesome. I mean, you did a great job in getting some of those people. So I commend you for that.
Thanks.
That's pretty great. What is your big goal with Trainual? Tell us, like, what's your vision? What's your BHAG? Like, where are you going with this?
Yeah, easy. The big vision is every company has a playbook. Everyone has an instruction manual. The reason businesses don't have them is because it feels like it takes so much time and effort to create one. So you don't do it. It's never the most urgent thing in your business. You only do it if you're in some fire sale kind of situation or some problem where someone's quitting. They gave their 2-week notice. You've got to write some stuff down. You've got to train the next person. And we want to shift that to be where training doesn't necessarily just happen out of necessity, but the playbook is built over time and more passively by collecting the knowledge in the business. So the way we're trying to evolve the technology, the tool, is just to collect all those exchanges between people where you learn something, it's a new best practice, you take on a new responsibility. We're constantly prompting you to put what you know into the system. We're plugged into all the other tools you use day to day, and little by little, the manual for your business is being built behind the scenes. So the vision, the bigger vision, is that every business has a playbook, or every business has an operations manual, because there'd be no excuse to not have one. Just sign up.
Okay. I'm now remembering the big value that you added in my company, in my billing company, where you interviewed all of my employees without me. And that to me was like, and you wouldn't tell me who said what, which was also pretty awesome. But if someone doesn't have that person, but wants to extract that type of information, like any advice for business owners to do something like that?
Yeah, of course. So the easiest way to do it without a consultant is to create an anonymous survey. And it's a little harder if you've got two people or three people working for you. But once you've got at least a handful of people, you can give them the instructions of saying, hey, I want you to be brutally honest. There's nothing going to be collected. If you feel like something would identify you and I'm going to know it's you, just don't put that thing. But I want to collect the honest feedback from the office. So with Organized Chaos, my consulting business, my process was a three-step process. So very similar to the do it, document it, delegate it. If you remember, my consulting was first in your business, we get the context of what you're trying to do with this business. And then second, we collect all the chaos, which is all the complaints, the ideas, the opportunities, what's happening behind the scenes, the problems, the customer issues. That's all the chaos in your business. We need to collect it in one place. And then step three is we create some clarity, which is just sifting through that feedback, grouping things together. So what I did that was so valuable, I think, in the consulting was these anonymous interviews where I'd collect feedback from all of a company's employees. And then I would find common denominators where you'd say 5 people are saying this. This is clearly a hot button, a broken issue in the business. Let's just work on how to fix this. Doesn't matter who said it or what they said or who's pointing fingers at who. And that's the kind of stuff we get sucked into a lot when people aren't anonymous. It's, you try to fill in the blanks and say, well, they're just mad about this because of what I said last year. And it's like, no, 5 people are saying this particular thing. So if you don't have a consultant, just start with a survey, make it anonymous, put questions in there that are about, what are the things that I, as a business owner, have promised that I haven't fulfilled on? What are the things that you think would break in this business if we brought in twice the customers next year? What are the, if you had $1,000 or $5,000 and total autonomy to fix something in the business, what would you use it on? It's asking those sort of questions that get at the heart of what's going on in your business. And I think it's something everyone should do.
Cool. So those were your top few questions you would ask, because I don't even know what you asked them.
I had 40 or 50 or 60 questions and I would cycle through them. So someday I'll release a book of questions or something. So look for that eventually.
Okay. I'm excited for that. Okay, so we're wrapping up here, but I have to ask you about your family, because your family's awesome. Your kids are adorable. And you seem to be very close. You work with your brother. And I'm just curious about growing up, your mom, any lessons that you've learned as a kid, as a parent? I want to see my kids be entrepreneurial as well, of course. What do you think happened in your childhood that made you so driven?
It's interesting. There's so many lessons. Like, my parents growing up, my dad was in the corporate world, so not entrepreneurial necessarily, but very ambitious and driven and kind of climbing the corporate ladder. My mom stayed home with us until we were in middle school, and then she started a career where she was an esthetician and did skincare and facials, and then that evolved into health coaching and nutrition and lasers and all this sort of stuff. And so it was probably an interesting perspective that at an early age I got exposed to my dad's, I guess, financial dealings and hearing him have calls or, flying across the country. And I aspired to be a businessman. And then I had that warm upbringing from my mom that was just, made it easy to express myself. We'd always talk about everything. We had great conversation. I felt like, I had all the support in the world to do whatever I wanted, be whatever I wanted to be, that sort of thing. But I was never pushed into entrepreneurship. To me, entrepreneurship was it was something I stumbled into that, like, someone's going to pay me to do this for them. They'll give me $10 to shovel their driveway or do landscaping or, it was always kind of a means to an end. Like, I can make this money very quickly before it's even legal to get a job. And I can use that to buy the snacks or the toys or whatever I wanted at the store. So I think the biggest thing I do now with my kids is when they want something, I say, well, how are you going to buy it? Where did you bring your wallet? Did you, like, where's your money? And then my son started asking me, well, how do I make money? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you think you could, if you do something that's useful, I'll give you money. And so he's coming up with ideas like, could I make your coffee in the morning? And I'm like, okay, well, I'll give you $1 for that. And it's about teaching how to create value more so than teaching entrepreneurship.
I love that because my daughter asked me the same thing. I also started this thing with, how are you going to pay for it? And she's like, I don't know how to make money. And I'm like, think about it. But I like the idea, and I don't want to pay them for chores because I want them to do chores on their own, right?
Right. Totally. It's funny. We were driving, we went to the basketball game last night, and my son's in the back seat. And I told him he could come and sell hot chocolate at the office one of these days. Like, it's cooler, is the coldest it is all year here now. So I said, you got to come up with your pricing though. What are you going to charge? And he on his own, he said, I'm going to charge $1 for hot chocolate, or $2 if they want marshmallows, and $3 if they want a candy cane in their thing. And I was like so proud, beaming in the front seat, like, yes, he figured it out. That's like the meaning of life right there.
Love it. Okay, so Chris, where can people find you? And Trainual, of course.
Yeah, so you can find me LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I hardly use Twitter, but I'm on there. Just Chris Ronzio, Ronzio. And then Trainual is just like train, UL training manual. So train UAL, trainual.com, or on any of the social platforms.
Okay, and we'll put a link in the show notes if you would like to sign up or learn more about Trainual. Okay, Chris, thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you. This is fun.
Thank you so much for listening. For more information on how to grow your business, visit our website at 4dglobalinc.com. That's the number 4, the letter D as in David, global, GLOBALINC.com. Click on the Owners Academy tab for more videos on sales, marketing, operations, and leadership. If you are in the healthcare space and would like to learn more about how to get started with an employee in India, or how to start a risk-free free trial with 4D Global, click on the Get Started for Free button on our website to book a time with someone on our team. See you next time.